Afternoon.
Obviously, first things first, like you said, I think majority of the people in the country will be appalled to hear the statistics, some of the things that you're saying, and I don't think anyone would agree with any of it. What I was just trying to ascertain and understand where you're coming from, you're throwing a lot of statistics, and I was trying to follow the numbers, right? Yep. You were saying, first you said that, obviously, this is specifically to one case, which is in Rotherham, and obviously we know it's been in the news how many times, and you said 87% of
84%.
84% of the people who got prosecuted are of Southeast Asian, and then you kept mentioning Muslims, which I understand. I'm an Asian Muslim, so I have nothing against that. But then you started mentioning the population of this country, and then saying there are 3% Muslims and things like that. But which I think, what you're comparing apples and pears, because this is one specific case to one specific area within England, which is in Rotherham, okay? And the people that were prosecuted or have been prosecuted or still being investigated in that specific case or in the Rotherham, which is, mind you know as well as I do, highly populated. A majority of the people there are Asian or Southeast Asian anyway. It's not the same as Essex or London or Cornwall. So obviously, then when you're mentioning national statistics, I think you're comparing apples and pears. Because you said nationally there are 3% Muslims.
Okay, Daniel,
right?
let me respond to what you said. I got your point. Let me respond to it because I think there's an issue here, understandably so, of shock and denial. And I just need you to be aware of something that you may not be aware of. Because I started this conversation all those years ago in a similar level of shock and denial. Unfortunately for your argument, it's not just Rotherham. Yes, in Rotherham, this has been, it's the most famous one, or infamous one, because it was the first one to be exposed. In 2014, an inquiry found in Rotherham there were more than 1,400 victims, 1,400 victims of grooming and sexual exploitation between 1997 and 2013. That's just in one town. But it gets worse, Daniel. Then it happened in Rochdale. And then in Rochdale, they found that basically sentences were given up to 19 years because of crimes committed against girls between the age of 13 and 15 in and around Rochdale between 2008 and 2010. Then there was a case in Oxford in 2013 where 5 Muslim men were convicted and handed sentences at the Old Bailey for exploiting girls between 11 and 15. All of the men were of Pakistani origin, except for 2 who were North African, also Muslim. Then it was in Bristol, where 13 Somali Muslim men were jailed for more than a total of 100 years after they were convicted in 2014 of running an inner-city sex ring. Then in Aylesbury, 6 South Asian men were jailed in 2015. For grooming underage white girls between 2006 and 2012. Then, in Peterborough, a total of 10 men were convicted of child sex crimes in the town. And the boss, Muhammad Khobaib, who was originally from Pakistan, he was jailed for 13 years at the Old Bailey after he was found guilty of forcing a 14-year-old girl to perform a sex act on him. And then Newcastle, and Daniel, you know what? It's too depressing to carry on. It goes on and on. One second, Daniel. The pattern in all of these, overwhelmingly, is South Asian Muslim men, primarily Pakistani, sometimes Somali Muslims, sometimes North African Muslims. It doesn't help us, Daniel, to pretend this wasn't a phenomenon that was replicated across the country. What I would advise you said you're a South Asian Muslim man, therefore your name probably is Daniel or something other than Daniel. I would advise you to address this topic head on and not pretend it's not a national phenomenon, because I guarantee you that anger will rise if you come on radio and pretend this is not a national problem.
I'm not here pretending in any way, buddy. I'm not here pretending in any way. I just wanted to make sure, and the statistics that you showed me is right. But at the same time, okay, the pockets and areas that you suggested, okay, if you follow national statistics in regards to the paedophilia gang, nationally, when I'm talking Great Britain, not just England, right? Great Britain, right? The biggest problem that we have paedophilia, and it's been spotted, and it comes in small patterns, and then it goes away and fades away, right? Which is basically mentioning the Catholic Church, which is mentioning basically the Pope himself who raised these problems, okay? Where it's not just 15 girls there, 20 girls there.
Daniel, you're doing the same thing again, because you said, I'm not denying these facts, but, and then your but.
Hold on,
Daniel, your but was followed by a whole bunch of Buttistan, right? And let's not Buttistan this topic. I said and made very clear, if the majority of country is white, then it's natural to see the majority of representation in any crime to be by white people, because we're living in a majority white country. What is concerning is if pockets of our country, communities like ours, Daniel, yours and mine, are disproportionately involved in any one type of crime. That disproportionate number raises questions about our attitudes, our meaning British Pakistani men, our attitudes towards the rest of society, and whether we have a Muslim supremacist attitude. One of the defendants in this case, Daniel, I'm sorry you're not going to like hearing this stuff, but the truth doesn't necessarily care about your feelings. One of the main defendants in trial argued that it's his religious right to have sex with underage girls, and that was his defense. Look it up, Daniel. It is unbelievable. And you and I know that that kind of argument gets bandied about. You and I know, and if you don't believe me again, look it up, that in Pakistan, your and my country of origin, where our parents are from, when they tried to raise the age of sexual consent, it was shot down by the Ideological Council of Guarding Islamic Culture in Pakistan, shot down in Parliament and deemed blasphemous for trying to raise the age of consent. Because religion gets involved, culture gets involved. We've got to be able to have this conversation without being in denial, Daniel.
Oh, no, I'm not in denial in any way. And
you
I
sound
appreciate
like you
everything
are.
you're saying.
Yeah.
No. And we're going to, the way in which way I think these guys should be treated, I can't even say on the radio, because I've got two kids, and one's a girl and one's a boy, right? So I would never, and I can tell you 100%, it shouldn't be allowed in even 1%. There should be no statistics where this is allowed. Yeah. But I'm just saying the way you were portraying the conversation, the way you were pronouncing the statistics, the amount of times that you mentioned Muslim Pakistani men.
That's who's involved in it. That's the truth. I'm sorry, the statistics don't give a damn about your feelings, Daniel.
I'm not hurt. I'm not
well, you sound hurt. You sound defensive.
No, I'm not hurt.
You know what you should have done, Dan? You know what you should have done? I really wish, because you said you're a Pakistani man, I really wish, for goodness sake, after the appeal I put out on the radio, I wish you'd called up and your first thought had been about these underage young white girls, the victims. I wish the first thing you did is call up this radio and say how disgusting to do this to these underage young victims. Instead, you want to obfuscate and talk to me about how I'm, giving statistics that you don't like. And it's just, this is what frustrates me, Daniel. Why was that your first reaction to the topic instead of thinking of the girls? And that's why I think it's about time that we just stop pretending this isn't a problem and address it head on, recognize there is this disproportionate problem within our communities, and worry about the victims before we worry about you and me, Daniel. We're Pakistani men. We can look after ourselves. Those young girls